I never thought I'd be the type to air family drama, but here I am. Let me lay this out for you. My name's Abigail Shaw, and for the past 5 years, I 24F, have poured everything into my family's woodworking business. What started as a tiny repair shop became a $30 million bespoke furniture company under my leadership. Sounds like a success story, right?
Yeah.
I thought so too until things took a hard turn. Our family business was Dad's, 58M, pride and joy. He opened it 18 years ago in a tiny rental space on Main Street. At first, it was just him making custom furniture for people in town, kitchen tables, chairs, cabinets, stuff like that. He was great at what he did, but he never really made much money. It kept the lights on and put food on the table, but that was about it. My older sister Avery, 35F, and I grew up with the shop being this constant part of our lives. Avery was always Dad's favorite, the classic overachiever, Ivy League business school, internships at fancy companies, the whole package. I was the practical kid. I stayed local, went to community college for graphic design, and helped Dad at the shop after classes. I guess you could say I didn't stand out, not compared to Avery anyway. And actually, I didn't mind. I'm not the type who seeks attention, but I loved that shop. I loved seeing raw materials turn into something beautiful. I liked working with customers and figuring out how to make their ideas come to life. Dad didn't always listen to my ideas, but he trusted me to handle the day-to-day stuff while he worked on projects. Meanwhile, Avery was off in another state working as a consultant for some big-name firm. She only visited on holidays, and even then, she'd make comments about how I was wasting my potential. You could be doing so much more than working here, Abigail, she'd say, like I didn't already know that. Around my senior year of college, I started thinking about how we could modernize the business. The custom furniture was great, but it wasn't scalable. We couldn't grow with just Dad handcrafting every piece. So I taught myself 3D design software and came up with a line of customizable furniture. Customers could choose the base design and tweak the size, color, and finish. It was a way to keep the personal touch but streamline production. I pitched the idea to Dad, and he wasn't exactly thrilled. He'd been doing things his way for decades and didn't see the need to change. But I worked on a prototype anyway and showed it to one of our loyal customers, a local boutique owner. She placed an order on the spot for 10 pieces. When Dad saw the check come in, he finally said, "Maybe you're on to something, kiddo." That one order turned into more orders, and soon we had a steady stream of clients. I graduated college and went all in. I redesigned the workshop, hired a couple of local guys to help with production, and got us set up on social media. It was a grind. I'd work 12 to 14-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week. Meanwhile, Avery was in Chicago living her best life, fancy job, fancy apartment, fancy vacations. She didn't have much to say about the shop back then. I guess it wasn't interesting enough for her. By the 3rd year, we hit $2 million in revenue. We'd gone from a small-town woodworking shop to a recognizable name in custom furniture. I'd landed contracts with boutique hotels and a few interior designers, which opened up a whole new market for us. Over the years, that steady growth transformed Shaw Designs into a $30 million business, something I never thought possible when we first started. The business was doing better than ever, and for the first time, Dad seemed genuinely proud of me. He'd always been hard to impress, so hearing him tell his friends, "Abigail's the reason this shop is still standing," meant a lot. But that's when Avery decided she wanted in. She called one night out of the blue and said she was thinking of leaving her job in Chicago. She talked about how she'd always wanted to come back and work in the family business. That was news to me because she'd never shown the slightest interest before. But Dad? Oh, he thought it was the best idea ever. "Both my girls running the company together, that's a dream come true," he said. I didn't want to burst his bubble, so I kept my reservations to myself. When Avery officially moved back, Dad didn't just bring her on as part of the team, he made her co-CEO. Just like that. She didn't know anything about woodworking, design, or even how the business ran, but she had a fancy MBA, so I guess that was enough for Dad. "She's got the business smarts," he said. "You've got the creative side. You'll balance each other out." At first, I tried to make it work. I stayed focused on the design and production side while Avery handled marketing and PR. She honestly had some good ideas, like getting us into trade shows and setting up partnerships with influencers. But she also had a habit of making decisions without consulting me. She'd commit to things we didn't have the capacity for or promise deadlines we couldn't meet. It drove me crazy, but Dad always took her side. "She's just trying to grow the business," he'd say, like I wasn't. At the time, I kept telling myself that as long as the business was thriving, it didn't matter who got the credit. But over time, it became clear that Avery wasn't just back to help, she was back to take over. Things didn't just change, they cracked wide open. The business wasn't one cohesive thing anymore. It felt like two separate entities awkwardly jammed together, and guess who kept getting sidelined?
Yeah.
Me. Avery wasn't just trying to contribute, she was on a mission to take over. She started by bringing in a marketing team as if my years of running social media and client outreach didn't count. Sure, I wasn't a marketing guru, but I had built real relationships with our customers, relationships that turned into contracts and loyalty. But Avery looked at me like I was some clueless intern. "We need professionals, Abigail," she said, like that was the magic answer to everything. I bit my tongue and let her bring in her team, hoping it might ease my workload. But her team didn't get us. Our business thrived on authenticity, personal touches, custom designs, real connections. But they came in with cookie-cutter strategies, plastering our brand across generic, flashy ads. One day I saw an Instagram post from our account that said, "Luxury furniture for every lifestyle." I almost spit out my coffee. Every lifestyle? We were all about high-end custom pieces that people invested in, not some generic department store furniture. When I brought it up, Avery dismissed me like I was overreacting. "This is how you scale, Abigail," she said with that fake patient tone she loved. "Broader audience, bigger growth. Scaling's great and all, but not when it means throwing away the customers who actually got us here." Avery either didn't get it or didn't care. Her obsession with bigger and better didn't stop there. For years, we ran the business out of a workshop attached to the storefront. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Avery hated it. "We need a bigger space," she flared one day like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I pointed out that we couldn't even fill half the space she was talking about. She didn't care. "Big clients want big businesses, Abigail," she said, like she was reading off a Pinterest quote board. Dad backed her up, of course, and before I knew it, we had a 5-year lease on a massive warehouse. It was all about image, glass-walled offices, a fancy showroom, the whole 9 yards. Sure, it looked impressive, but it was a logistical disaster. Orders got delayed because the team couldn't figure out the new layout, and production time slowed to a crawl. Meanwhile, I was spending late nights trying to fix the chaos while Avery gave tours to investors, soaking up the credit for a space she didn't even know how to run. But the worst part? She started stepping on my toes with my team. The designers and craftsmen who had been with us for years knew how to get things done, and they trusted me to lead. Avery didn't like that. She started bypassing me, giving them assignments directly. One day one of my designers came to me saying, "Avery just gave me this project," he said, holding up a sketch. "She said you approved it." I hadn't even seen it. When I confronted her, she barely looked up from her laptop. "It's called delegation, Abigail," she said with this smug little grin like she hadn't just derailed my entire workflow. And then there were the meetings, endless meetings that I wasn't invited to. Vendors, clients, potential partners, Avery handled them all, and I'd only hear about it after the fact. One time I showed up to work and found out she'd pitched a furniture line to a retailer without even telling me. The designs weren't even ready for production. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" I asked, trying to keep my frustration in check. She waved it off. "It wasn't a big deal," she said as if presenting unfinished work to a major client was a totally normal thing to do. Her power plays only got bolder. She brought in some strategic advisor named James, a guy who talked like a walking TED Talk. Synergy, streamlining, scaling, you name the buzzword, he used it. His big idea: Outsourcing production overseas. You'll save a fortune, he said, pointing at some fancy chart. I couldn't believe it. We built this business on quality and customization, I said. If we start mass-producing furniture, we lose everything that makes us unique. Avery didn't like it. Abigail, you're being dramatic. This is how companies grow. It wasn't about growth, it was about control. Avery wasn't trying to make the business better, she wanted to mold it into her own vision, no matter what it cost. The final blow came during a meeting with a potential partner. Avery introduced herself as the visionary behind the company, taking credit for initiatives I had created from scratch. She didn't even flinch as she rewrote history in front of everyone. Afterward, I couldn't hold back. Don't ever take credit for my work again, I told her simply and clearly. She shrugged like it was nothing. It's not about you, Abigail. It's about the company. But it wasn't. It was about her. By then, I barely recognized the business I had poured my heart into. The clients I'd nurtured, the team I'd led, the culture we'd built, it all felt like it was slipping through my fingers. And Dad? He didn't care. As long as the numbers looked good, he was happy to stay out of it. And just as I was struggling to keep up with all the changes, the day arrived that would upend everything, my dad's 58th birthday. By the time the party came around, I was completely burned out and barely holding it together. Avery had taken over so much that I felt like a stranger in the company I'd built. Walking away crossed my mind more than once, but deep down, I knew I couldn't let go. Not after everything I had sacrificed to get us here. Avery had taken the lead on planning the party, and it was clear from the start that her focus wasn't on celebrating Dad, it was on showcasing herself. She made every decision without consulting anyone. I debated skipping it altogether, but Mom insisted I come, saying, "It's your father's big day, Abigail." So reluctantly, I agreed, though I couldn't shake the feeling that this night would be anything but simple. Update 1, in the 3 months since Dad's birthday party, Shaw Designs has transformed into something completely unrecognizable. After watching Avery's attempted power grab at the party, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Here's what happened next. The morning after that disastrous party, I arrived at the office before sunrise. I wasn't just early, I was prepared. I had been quietly gathering documentation for months, watching Avery's increasingly aggressive moves. When she arrived around 9 a.m., her usual confident stride on full display with Dad trailing behind her, she looked surprised to see me. "What are you doing here so early after last night? I thought you'd have the dignity to stay home," she said, tossing her bag onto the conference table like she owned the place. I leaned back in my chair, calm and steady. "Just tying up some loose ends," I replied. Without wasting time, I pulled out the ownership agreement from 3 years ago. Avery barely glanced at it, but her smugness faltered when I highlighted the key section. "Remember when we needed funding for the warehouse expansion? Dad sold me an additional 13% of the company. That brings my total ownership to 53%. I'm the majority shareholder now." The look on her face was priceless. "That's not possible," she stammered. "It's not only possible, it's fact," I shot back, displaying the next page. "Here's your signature, Dad. You were in such a hurry to get the deal done that you didn't even bother to negotiate. But I wasn't done. The core designs that generate 80% of our revenue? They're owned by my separate company, Artisan Concepts. Shaw Designs only has a licensing agreement to use them. That agreement expired this morning." Avery's head snapped toward the screen, her eyes scanning the licensing terms. Dad slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do that. You'd be destroying everything we've built." I didn't flinch. "No, Dad. I'm protecting what I built." While Avery was busy making speeches and hiring PR teams, I was the one keeping this company running. The clients, the production, the designs, that was all me. "And you both thought you could just erase me?" The aftermath was immediate. Through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering in small groups, their whispers growing louder as they checked their emails. One by one, phones lit up, laptops opened, and heads turned toward our conference room. I had already contacted our major clients, informing them of the leadership changes and my potential departure. Most of them had clauses in their contracts allowing termination if I was no longer involved. The next few weeks were chaos. Avery tried to salvage what she could, but her fancy marketing team couldn't replace the relationships I'd built. Several key clients immediately suspended their orders, citing concerns about the company's direction. Our craftsmen, many of whom had been with us since the beginning, started updating their resumes. Dad finally realized the gravity of the situation. One morning, he came into my office, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "I didn't think," he started, then stopped. "I always assumed Avery's business knowledge would." He trailed off again. I let the silence hang there. After everything that had happened, I wasn't about to make this easier for him. Eventually, Avery had no choice but to step down. She left for San Francisco 2 weeks later, accepting a position with a tech startup. Her LinkedIn post about exciting new opportunities and valuable lessons learned made no mention of what really happened. The warehouse lease she'd insisted on? I negotiated an early termination. We moved back to our original location, but this time with proper workflows and systems in place. The craftsmen who'd stuck with us through the chaos helped redesign the workspace, making it both functional and authentic to who we are. Our social media returned to showcasing real projects and the stories behind them. No more generic luxury lifestyle posts. We lost some of the flashier clients Avery had brought in, but our core customers, the ones who appreciated quality and craftsmanship, stayed loyal. Dad took a step back from daily operations. He still comes to the shop, but now he focuses on what he loves, working with his hands, teaching our newer craftsmen the traditional techniques that are our foundation. We don't talk about Avery or the birthday party. Some wounds take longer to heal. The business is smaller now, more focused. We're not chasing explosive growth or trying to be something we're not. Our revenue has stabilized at a healthy level, and more importantly, we're back to doing what we do best, creating furniture that tells a story, pieces that become part of our clients' lives. Mom still tries to play peacemaker, suggesting family dinners and holiday gatherings. I decline politely but firmly. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Sometimes maintaining boundaries is more important than maintaining appearances. Looking back, I realized that this wasn't just about business, it was about respect, recognition, and standing up for what you've built. Avery thought she could waltz in and take over because she had the right credentials. Dad thought he could hand over my work to his golden child without consequences. They both learned the hard way that real success isn't built on MBAs and marketing strategies, it's built on passion, dedication, and genuine relationships. The shop feels like home again. The sound of saws, the smell of wood, the quiet satisfaction of creating something beautiful, it's all back, but different. Better. Because now there's no question about who's in charge, no power struggles or competing visions. Just a clear path forward, built on the foundation I created, leading to a future I can believe in. They say family business is complicated. What they don't tell you is that sometimes the best thing you can do for your business is to choose it over family. It sounds harsh, but it's true. And at the end of the day, I'd rather have a business built on honesty than a family built on lies. Update 2: The holiday season brought a fresh wave of family drama. After months of avoiding family gatherings, I reluctantly agreed to attend Christmas dinner at my parents' house. Mom had been insisting that time heals all wounds, and that we needed to try being civil. Avery arrived late, making a grand entrance like she always did. She'd flown in from San Francisco, where her startup job was apparently revolutionizing the tech industry. She gave Mom a quick, performative hug, ignored me completely, and made a beeline for Dad. They spent most of the evening huddled together in the corner, whispering and laughing while I helped Mom with dinner preparations. Dinner itself was painfully awkward. Avery focused all her energy on charming Dad, going on about some big consulting opportunity and her next career move. When Mom asked about how the company was doing, I kept my answer short. "It's been a good year," I said, not wanting to give Avery any ammunition. "A good year," Avery echoed, raising an eyebrow, "or just a lucky one?" Her tone was so condescending it made my skin crawl. Mom shot me a pleading look, and Dad just kept eating like he didn't hear a thing. I thought I was in the clear after dinner, but Avery cornered me in the living room. "You must be so proud of yourself," she started, her voice low and bitter. "You've got the company now, you're finally the star. But don't think for a second this is going to last, Abigail. You're going to screw it up eventually." I kept my face blank, though inside I was fuming. "If that's all, Avery, I'd like to get back to what's left of the holiday," I said calmly. She let out a bitter laugh and walked away. The rest of the night was a mess. Dad disappeared into his study, and Mom's attempts to keep the holiday spirit alive felt forced and exhausting. That night, driving home, I kept thinking about all the fights, the bitterness, and the constant power struggles. Avery had turned our family business into a war zone, and no matter what I did, it was never going to change. I couldn't fix this. I didn't even want to anymore. The next morning, I made my decision. No more pretending, no more holding on to hope that we could return to how things used to be. Avery had made it clear there was no relationship left to salvage, and honestly, I couldn't be in the same room with her ever again. I blocked her number and all her social media accounts. It was like cutting off a gangrene limb, painful but necessary for survival. The company is thriving under my sole leadership now. We've returned to our authentic roots, focusing on quality craftsmanship and real customer relationships. My team is flourishing too, designers are pitching bold new ideas, and production runs smoother than ever. Mom still sends messages about family reconciliation, but I've learned to be firm. "I love you," I tell her, but I won't put myself in that position again. She doesn't understand, but she's starting to accept it. Dad hasn't reached out at all. I guess he's still processing how his dream of having both daughters run the company turned into such a nightmare. What I've learned from all of this is that sometimes family can be your worst enemy, especially in business. The bonds that are supposed to make you stronger can become chains that hold you back. Breaking free isn't easy, but sometimes it's the only way to save what you've built. In the end, I'd rather have a successful business built on honesty than a toxic family relationship built on lies. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away and build something new, something that's truly yours. The future of Shaw Designs is now firmly in my hands, and I'm never letting anyone threaten that again. Update 3: 6 months have passed since that fateful Christmas dinner, and life at Shaw Designs has taken an unexpected turn. The most significant change? Dad announced his retirement last month. No party, no grand announcement, he just stopped coming to the office one day. I think part of him still feels embarrassed about how everything played out. The few times we've talked since then, the conversations have been short and strained. He mumbles something about market conditions or wood prices, then finds an excuse to end the call. Avery has moved on to her next venture in San Francisco, though she can't resist crafting her own narrative on LinkedIn. Her posts about new beginnings and invaluable lessons learned in family business never mention me, but the subtext is clear. Her followers praise her resilience and a growth mindset, unaware of the real story behind her departure. The business itself has undergone a meaningful transformation. We've repurposed that massive warehouse Avery insisted on, turning those flashy showrooms into efficient production zones and collaborative design spaces. The focus is back on what matters: quality craftsmanship and genuine client relationships. Our client base has evolved naturally. Last month, we landed a contract to furnish a historic hotel renovation in Boston, exactly the kind of project that showcases our strengths. The team has found its rhythm again, with experienced craftsmen mentoring newcomers in both traditional techniques and modern design tools. Some surprising allies emerged from this mess. James, that strategic advisor Avery brought in, reached out to apologize. "I saw what was happening," he admitted, "but I was too focused on pleasing the person who hired me." He's now helping us streamline operations in a way that actually aligns with our values. Last week, I received an email that made me pause. One of Avery's former MBA classmates, now a professor at a prestigious business school, wanted to write a case study about Shaw Designs. I politely declined. Some stories aren't ready to be told, at least not by outsiders. Mom keeps trying to orchestrate a reconciliation, recently inviting me to a casual family dinner, where Avery would happen to be in town. I declined. The wounds are still too fresh, and honestly, I'm no longer interested in maintaining appearances. I've started seeing a therapist to process everything. She helped me realize that this isn't just about the business, it's about patterns that have existed in our family for decades. Dad's favoritism, Avery's entitlement, my need to prove myself, it all came to a head in the business, but it had been building for years. Looking ahead, I'm excited about our future. We're expanding our apprenticeship program, developing new design collections, and exploring sustainable wood sourcing partnerships. These are the kinds of initiatives I always wanted to pursue but couldn't while dealing with constant power struggles. The most valuable lesson from all this? Success doesn't have to look like what others expect. Dad wanted a picture-perfect family business with both daughters at the helm. Avery wanted a flashy corporate empire she could brag about at alumni events. I just wanted to build something authentic and sustainable. Now, 6 months after cutting ties with my family, I finally feel like I can breathe. The business isn't just surviving, it's thriving, and it's doing so on my terms. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best outcomes, and while I lost a family, I saved a legacy that's truly worth preserving. They say business isn't personal, but when it's family business, it's always personal. The key is learning which personal relationships are worth saving and which ones are holding you back. In my case, letting go of toxic family ties was the price of preserving everything I'd worked to build, and I don't regret that choice for a second. Thank you, everyone. Your support and comments really mean a lot. Sometimes it helps to know you're not alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics in business. Special thanks to this community for being a safe space to share our stories.